Welcome back. Sunday recap, last one of this season. It's been a good one, Mike. Kevin Bunk, Michael Merlo coming to you every week on the Sunday recap. Of course, this postseason we've been doing Monday mornings, but we will be recapping today the worst Super Bowl that we've ever seen. And we'll also talk a little bit of offseason stuff. Our draft guide came out this morning, so we'll walk through some of that way later in the show. But, Mike, last night, I could hardly even sleep after that game last night. It was so bad.
Is terrible. I mean, so much build up, right, for a Super Bowl. It's 2 weeks. It's then you were on Radio Row, and it's just a great show of NFL content, this and that. You're so pumped for a game, and to get that one is just disgusting. It is. It was never entertaining. That's the problem. Like, it was never entertaining, and now we have to sit here and talk about what was an awful, awful Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was so bad. And you get the terrible first half, shutout. Chiefs don't even cross midfield. And then the halftime show, disaster. And then the third quarter starts. Chiefs, once again, can't even cross midfield. They just didn't even look ready to play last night in Kansas City. And that's so uncharacteristic of them.
That's the most shocking part, that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes had 2 weeks to prepare for a game. And like you said, they just did not look like they were ready to show up and play. Let's say this, because I think we both agreed with this going into the game, and that was, we knew Philadelphia had the better roster, but we thought that the Chiefs would make up for it with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the experience of being in these games, and that just didn't happen. And it was taken to such a whole different level because, again, Philadelphia's roster is incredible, and we're going to talk about that obviously throughout today. It's an incredible roster, but did we really think it was that much better? Like, that much better than what Kansas City had? I don't know.
What really surprised me was I thought the only offensive line in the league that could hold up was, throw in Detroit. I thought those were the only two offensive lines, Kansas City and Detroit, that could hold up with the Eagles' defensive line. And they made the Chiefs' offensive line look like a bottom 5 line in the league. You wouldn't even have thought. I know Tooney's been moving around and they're not totally healthy and where they want to be, but you would have thought that was their entire group of backups as it was in the Tampa Bay Super Bowl. I mean, they weren't even able to. It was just revolving door after revolving door. Take your pick where you want to rush from. They got dominated, Mike.
And they didn't blitz.
Mahomes couldn't do anything. They didn't blitz once on one drop back. They did not blitz. So Mahomes, as much as he played a poor game, first of all, we're not going to sit here and act like he was good and he overcame as he tried in that Tampa Bay Super Bowl. But Mahomes had no time the whole game. They didn't even give the offense a chance to get going. And I'm surprised that Andy Reid and that offensive line and Mahomes would allow that to happen.
No, it was very reminiscent of that Tampa Bay game. I think I said it in the second quarter. I whispered to my friend, I was like, this is the Tampa game all over again. And this was kind of a thought process going in. We knew they didn't have a great offensive line coming into this game. We knew they had issues at tackle. We knew they were playing Tooney out of position. He was playing left tackle again. And I almost wondered if Reid was going to move him back inside because they were having problems everywhere, but I kind of felt like they were really having problems on the inside. And I wondered at a halftime, if they moved Tooney back to left guard? They didn't do that, obviously. They just did not put their offensive line in good position either. I mean, if you look at what they did in the AFC Championship game, they got Mahomes in motion a lot. It was a lot of quick throws. They didn't do that here. They didn't really help their offensive line out until really the second drive of the second half, where you saw them, okay, we're just going to have them roll out, take the snap and roll out and throw something on the run. They didn't try that until they were down 27. So it was just good on the Eagles. I mean, right? I mean, this is really all we could say. Yes, the Chiefs weren't ready to play. The Chiefs didn't have the offensive line, but they weren't ready to play because they played such a great team, and their offensive line wasn't ready to play because that defensive line showed up in a huge way.
And you would be shocked to hear the score was 40-22 with Saquon's game. He was essentially taken out of it. And Spagnuolo clearly said what he should have done and took Barkley out and said, Hurts, you got to beat us. And for most of the game, Hurts beat them. But the DeJean pick six, and they gave great field position with the Bond interception. The defense won them that game completely. Like 40 points doesn't reflect how I felt about the Eagles' offense last night. They probably could have scored more if they wanted to. They weren't really trying to late in that game, but I didn't think that they were overwhelmingly great on offense. Just 40-22, like for them to put up 40 in this game, and the Chiefs 22 is even misleading. They didn't have anything going offensively for them last night. So this was just a terrible Super Bowl. You knew. I hate to say it because it's such a revisionist history type of thing and Monday morning quarterback. You knew after the first 3 or 4 drives of that game, Kansas City wasn't going to get close. Once it got to 10-0, it just didn't feel like they had anything going at all.
Yeah, I felt that way, but I also thought going into the half, I'm like, well, this is the Kansas City Chiefs and this is Patrick Mahomes, and anything is possible with this team. We've seen crazy comebacks before. We've seen obviously the 28-3. So, I mean, I'm trying to give any sort of hope watching that game, like, hey, anything can happen. We've seen it before. Let's just pray for a good second half here. And obviously we didn't get that.
Here we got a question now from Brendan here. One of our great listeners, Brendan, on the
Super Bowl last night. At the Super Bowl last night,
Brendan. At the Super Bowl last night, fake Giants fan here with the logo. Don't be misled. Where does this defense rank all time for you guys? And then he says at least 2,000 on. So I'd say probably right off the top of my head, maybe outside of the top 5, right outside of the top 5 since 2000, because Seattle was definitely better. Baltimore was definitely better. Denver was better. Patriots have had so many great defenses on Super Bowl winning teams. So, they'd probably find themselves right around number 5.
Okay, 4 or 5.
Because this is a great defense. This defense, if you look at what they did all year, this was a pretty historic season. This might be the greatest Eagles defense of all time.
Well, it's funny. I saw all week, the week leading into the Super Bowl here, I saw these comparisons to the Seattle teams of when they won the Super Bowl, when they beat Denver, and then the next year where they lost to the Patriots. And that comparison makes a lot of sense today, especially the one that crushed Denver, because you have the undersized quarterback that's mobile, doesn't have the greatest arm, but it's good enough, right? And could make the throws when he has to. We saw that, obviously, in the Super Bowl. They made him throw. He threw. You had a really good running game, really good running back, not as good, obviously. Saquon to Marshawn Lynch. Saquon's obviously much better. And I think the Eagles have better weapons.
Whoa.
What?
Much better season this year.
Yeah, Saquon was better in this. Saquon was better in this season.
Because I don't know if I'm even taking Saquon over Marshawn historically.
I think I probably am, but I'd have to look. But I think
you were just quick to go to the much better there.
Well, Saquon had 2,500 yards this year. I mean, I don't think Marshawn had a season close to this one.
Just saying, Marshawn. This is one of the greats. Either way,
I don't want to disrespect him, but the comparisons are really there, because then you look at the defense, and I'm not going to go through every defensive position, but Seattle was loaded, and this Eagles team is absolutely loaded.
Mm-hmm.
So that comparison makes a lot of sense.
I like the comparison of the quarterbacks too. I think Hurts is actually in a similar place to Russ, where if you look at the upcoming trajectory of his career, I could see Hurts being an MVP finalist the same way Russ was. You can see him having a portion of his career that's better than the one he's already had statistically. But I could also see him just staying in this. I don't want to call him a game manager because I still feel like he's too good to be called a game manager. But he's kind of just does what the Eagles need him to do to win, which is awesome. That's a great thing. He rarely costs you a game. The interception he threw yesterday, I don't want to harp on any of the bad that he did, but the interception he threw yesterday was disgusting. Abysmal interception. That was terrible. But other than that, I mean, Hurts has just done what it takes every stage of his career, and that goes back to college. So I like Jalen Hurts a lot. I'm excited he got his ring. Where do you put him now out of quarterbacks? Because I think that the easy guys that are better than him are Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar, Daniels. That's 5 right there. And then after that, you could justify Hurts 6.
I wouldn't put him 6. There's still a
Yeah.
few other guys I would take over him. And I want to say, just to go back to the Russ thing, I think I feel better. Like, I think I felt better about Russ after his Super Bowl than I do about Hurts after his.
Yeah,
But
that's fair. I
especially,
mean, Russ was a stud passer, too. In his
right,
prime,
that's
he
what
was
it is.
an absolute stud. And he
That's
was
what it is.
he was the best. He was able to throw from the pocket really well, but he was the best improviser in the league.
Yeah.
So Russ was a stud. Russ, I mean, there's a case for Russ at the end of his career for the Hall of Fame. Hurts has
I don't think there's a question. I think I would vote for him on the first ballot. But I would do that for a lot of guys, and the writers don't agree with me, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Russ doesn't have a Super Bowl MVP though.
No, he doesn't.
Because he didn't get it that year.
Yeah, let's talk about this comment here. Well, this comment that Brendan just said. I want to make a statement. The Giants should unretire his number. They should.
The Giants should unretire Michael Strahan's number.
Yes, that was despicable. That was disgusting what he did the other night. I don't care what he did for this franchise winning a Super Bowl in 2007. That was disgusting. Kick the franchise that gave you everything while they're down at their worst. Yeah, okay, Michael. I would legitimately unretire the number.
I think that's a pretty big stretch right there. I'm surprised he waved the flag, but he might be the second best player to ever play for the New York Giants. Is he?
I give 92 to Kayvon Thibodeau right now. And I hate Kayvon.
Gee, dude, way too far. Way too far. If you're unretiring it, no one wears it for a year or two. Kayvon? Come on, dude.
I can't stand Kayvon. Give him the number.
So I think that Strahan waving that was surprising. Obviously, because he's with NFL on Fox, because he's with Saquon, who he's definitely close with.
Yeah.
That's why he did it.
Kiss his ass more, please.
I was surprised, man. I was surprised that he waved. I thought Strahan was a real Giant and a real hater of Philly and Dallas and Washington.
You thought.
I would never even consider. He'd have to commit like triple homicide for me to unretire his number.
That's basically the same thing. I mean, they're basically very similar. It's like same Brendan thing. Switching over to being an Eagles fan. I mean, it's disgusting.
That's a bad one. That's a bad one.
But either way, where does Hurts rank top 10? We'll go back to that. I think he's bottom of the top 10. I don't know. I still take Herbert over him. I would still take Love. I still take Love over him. I would consider Dak. Who else?
I would not consider Dak. I would not consider Love.
Stroud
needs to do some more, though. I mean, this is a guy now who's gone to 2 Super Bowls, has a Super Bowl MVP, has played really well on both runs. I think I would have a hard time taking a lot of guys. Because you can't – there's no one else in the NFC besides Daniels that I'm taking. Maybe Stafford if I have to win one game. But even then,
definitely Stafford if I'm taking.
But even then, that's starting to turn now. Stafford going into next year, there might be like a foot out at the door feeling surrounding him. I don't know, man. I think Hurts could be 6. Because I don't think I'm. Think about Howie Roseman. Put yourself in Howie Roseman's shoes. Would he trade Hurts for Herbert 1-for-1?
Well, no. I mean, I think the situation that he's in is a really good one, and it kind of is molded towards what Jalen's game is around, and they can run the ball. Obviously, with Jalen, he did a great job last night running the football. So I think he's probably 7 or 8. Like, I think, like not on the Eagles, like not like just taking a quarterback on a average team, regular team. Probably taking 7 or 8 guys before I take Jalen.
Do you think Sirianni has now inserted himself into those top 7, 8 coaches that you just can't, replace their value if you lost them?
Yeah, I think he's getting there. I mean, he's going to get a huge payday, right? I think one of the I think it was Schefter talking about how, these rookie coaches are getting $12-13 million instantly a year. What's he going to get? He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won one now. He's probably going to get, $15 million a year. He's going to get a big contract from the Eagles. He's going to obviously be negotiating a new contract this offseason. So, yeah, I mean, how wrong was I and basically everybody else on Nick Sirianni? But I'll take it. I'll take the L. I'm confident in myself. I could do that. He's done a really good job, and he fits what this team needs and what this exact organization needs, and it's a perfect fit. And he's molded to what they needed him to do, and make sure he has good coordinators. That's all I'll say. I'll throw in that shot.
And yeah, that's what's interesting is Kellen Moore obviously expected to leave. Fangio is there for as long as he stays in football. Yeah. But Kellen Moore expected to leave now, and you wonder if they have an internal replacement, because the last time they went for the internal replacement, it was Johnson, and he was terrible after losing Steichen. So now there's a question to be answered for Sirianni. Can he replace the play caller again? Because the last time he tried to do it on his own, he botched it. And Howie Roseman clearly had to step in after last season. Or Jeff Lurie, whoever it was. One of the higher-ups stepped in and said, we're getting you new coordinators here. And that's exactly what they did. Howie, I think, stepped in completely, used his relationships to get Fangio and Moore. Now Kellen leaves. Who does he take with him to New Orleans? Will he call plays in New Orleans, or can he give a guy in Philly, a promising young guy, an opportunity to do it in New Orleans? So I don't know how Sirianni will look next year. I think he relies on his coordinators a lot, and that's not a bad thing. The Harbaughs do it. Belichick always did it with his offensive coordinators.
Yeah.
Tomlin does it. Like, good coaches do it. It's okay with me. But he clearly needs
he's not a scheme guy.
Caller.
No, he's not a scheme guy, and you need your coordinators there. Agreed. Fangio will be there for a while, and credit to him. He obviously did a great job last night, and I think he heard a lot about the 0-8 against Patrick Mahomes, and for him to then have that performance, for his defense to have that performance was impressive. The offensive coordinator is going to be very interesting, though. It's going to be. I mean, the reason why I think they really tailed off in 2023 was because the play calling was terrible. They had a lot of bad things going on over there, and there was just no continuity. We knew about Hurts and Sirianni not having the greatest relationship. Then Hurts didn't even want him in meetings at some points in 2023. So, yeah, they're going to have to make those replacements. That replacement, it's going to be a big hire.
Now going forward, I do feel like Philadelphia has the best future in the league, the best setup, because they have a young quarterback. They're aging guys on offense, Barkley and Brown. I think while Saquon's year, probably the greatest season by a running back ever, all things considered, isn't replaceable and will never be replicated by him or anyone in the league right now, I think you can live when you lose him in a year or two.
Mm.
But they have a great setup, especially defensively. All these young guys, we were talking about it last night, how many guys fell into their lap? Mitchell, DeJean last year fell into their lap completely. Those are guys that I had on the draft board as top 25 players. Eagles get DeJean in round 2. Mitchell falls to him. He was, I think, my 11th ranked player last year in the draft, and I wasn't alone in that. I wasn't reinventing the wheel by saying that. He was a stud. He was the best corner in the draft, and everyone knew it. So you had those guys that were just monsters that fall to him. Jalen Carter, obviously, comes with risk, but how he gets aggressive, does it. Carter's the best defensive tackle in the league from a pass rushing standpoint. And then guys like Jordan Davis, who, hasn't had the career that you'd want from a first rounder, but still very impactful in the rotation. Josh Sweat I thought Josh Sweat should have been Super Bowl MVP last night.
Wow.
He was, okay. And that's not to take anything from Hurts, but Sweat ruined the Chiefs offense. Just absolutely crippled everything they tried to do. No one set up better, man.
And I forgot this one last night. We brought up Nolan Smith last night, as Brendan just says here in the comments.
Yep.
He was great. He fell to them at the end of the second round, at the end of the first round. And Nakobe Dean, who was a big time player, fell to them as well. People were like, how the hell is Nakobe Dean still here? They got Nakobe Dean. So, and when I texted you this last night, this wasn't taking any credit away from Howie Roseman. I had said, look at all the players that have just fell in their laps. And especially this past draft, where their biggest need coming into this offseason was corner. And they got arguably the two best corners in the draft in round 1 and round 2. It's so goddamn frustrating with this franchise because, again, you can pick the best player on the board, right? And things aren't going to work out. They pick the right player, the guy falls to their lap, and then they develop them into big-time players. So it's more than just drafting them with this organization as well. They do a great job of developing them.
And how he takes these guys, but you also have to blame the general manager. I mean, prime example is always going to be Jalen Carter because he's the best of this batch of guys that have fallen to him. But Chicago, remember, they had the first pick, and we all thought they're just going to take Carter with the first pick. Traded out of it, got a haul, and they could have got him at 9, and they took Darnell Wright.
Yep.
Like, these are the
differences. Traded with Philly again.
They traded Philly again, exactly, to move so that Philly can get Carter. What was it? Move one spot in the draft to get Carter. These are the differences with Roseman. I'd even throw Brett Veach. I think Brett Veach does a great job. I know he has Mahomes. I know he has Andy Reid. But I think Brett Veach does a terrific job. I think Brad Holmes has done a lot of this, letting guys fall. Like Penei Sewell fell to them. He's probably the best player in the draft unanimously. Yeah. Fell to them, and they pick him at, 7? Or I think it was 7 or 6. 6 what it was because Waddle was 7 that year. But they just do a great job, these executives. Meanwhile, you have the team that takes the quarterback that doesn't work out. And like this year, if you go look at the draft guide, I don't have a quarterback in my top 15 players. Giants or Titans or somebody's going to take them in the top 3.
Yeah.
And they have to. But that means someone behind them is going to get Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. And those are studs. And Howie Roseman never misses, never overthinks. The one time he did was when he took Rager over Justin Jefferson. And imagine that if they had Jettas. But they took Rager over Jefferson, and he cut ties with Rager after 2 years because he knew it wasn't good. He goes against A.J. Brown at the draft, and now they're Super Bowl champs.
The difference in this is the perfect example of the way organizations are run, more specifically in the NFC East. The NFC, the pick before Jalen Carter, who is arguably one of the best defensive linemen in football right now and could very well end up being the best defensive tackle in the league by next season. The pick before him, and Bijan's great, but the Falcons, who had a couple of backs already, took Bijan Robinson at 8. Okay? That's the difference right there. You tell me what is more important, an elite pass rushing defensive tackle or a running back they don't split carries with, but Algier is a workhorse for them too. So please tell me which is more important.
Yeah. Just bad work. Atlanta, first of all, Atlanta does a terrible job on the draft every year. But even at 7 in this draft, Tyree Wilson for Vegas, you're looking for a pass rusher, and you're taking Tyree Wilson. Now, listen, we don't have the exact evidence, police reports of Jalen Carter's incident at Georgia, but now we're sitting here, and you know what? The GMs that passed on him look pretty dumb because Jalen Carter hasn't had an incident in the pros, and all he's done is be an all-pro defensive tackle. While you have guys, searching for players that can win them games on teams that took Darnell Wright, Tyree Wilson, and a running back.
Wait, Tyree Wilson was the kid from Texas Tech, right?
Yeah, great long pass rusher at Texas Tech, but he's a project.
Has he done anything?
No, he's done nothing.
This is the problem. They allow this to happen. The rest of the GMs are allowing this to happen.
Tyree Wilson in 2 years, 56. He's an outside linebacker, too. He plays a lot of off-ball linebacker. So 56 tackles and 8 sacks in 2 years. Jalen Carter is the best defensive tackle in the NFL. So you have an average outside linebacker where you could have, and maybe Tyree takes that step next year, and he's great. And he has 9.5 sacks and 80 tackles. Maybe Pete Carroll taps into it. But you could have had Jalen Carter. All these teams could have had the best player in the draft. And that was a unique year because obviously guys like DeJean and Mitchell fall. When does the best player in the draft fall to the 9th pick? And at 9, the team that has it wasn't even going to take him, so you had to trade up.
Yeah.
No, when does that happen? Never.
It's sickening. It's absolutely sickening.
And then Philly sits down at 30 and gets Nolan Smith.
Yeah. They didn't have to trade up for him.
Like, what are we doing there? Dallas Cowboys, Mozzie Smith. Jacksonville, Anton Harrison. Cincinnati, Miles Murphy. Can't even get on the field, Miles Murphy at defensive end. Nolan Smith, pick 30.
I remember screaming at that. I remember screaming at that draft. I was enraged at that draft. I remember that. And it kind of got forgotten about. It kind of got forgotten about that draft until Nolan Smith has a fantastic postseason and, really makes a name for himself. I mean, this is just, did they get into Nakobe Dean that draft or was it the year before?
Yeah, 3rd round that year. No, it was the year before.
Okay, good. So, again, keep letting it happen.
It's insane, man. And we go through this the whole time, but it's just good. We'll always come back to it. Good on Roseman for making the pick. Because I think a lot of general managers also see 7-8 teams in front of them passing. Like this happened with Jermaine Johnson, right? Jermaine Johnson, I had as the 4th player in the draft. And he's not, when you look back at it, he's not. He's probably somewhere closer to 15, 16.
Yeah.
But I had him as a top 5 player in the draft. The Jets also had him as a top 5 player in the draft. And I know the Jets are the Jets. I'm sure that there were other players, other teams in the league that also said Jermaine Johnson's a top 7 player.
Yeah.
He falls to the late 20s because of his age. But you think every GM in there, especially the rookie GMs, aren't sitting there saying, I'd like to take Jermaine Johnson, but why did these guys that have had success just pass on him?
Right.
Why are we the team that should take him after these 9 teams, especially a couple that take edge rushers? Why are they taking him? And Roseman does not hesitate, gets aggressive, gets his guys, and that's what separates him. Part of what separates him.
Same thing with Tunsil that year. It's like all these teams pass on Tunsil, who's going to be the number 1 overall pick. And I'll never forgive the Giants for this one because I think it would have changed a lot. You had a franchise left tackle, and who got him? Miami got him. So it was like, whatever.
The greatest one of all time is Dan Marino falling to pick 28 because he did coke at Pitt. And
are you serious? I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. You go back and look at it was Elway and Marino were the two big quarterbacks. Best quarterback draft ever until probably the 2022 class with Hurts or 2020, whatever. 2020. Hurts, Burrow, Herbert, Love, Tua. But 1983, it's Elway or Marino. And Elway goes 1. Marino did coke in college. And it's not on video or anything. It's just like people said Dan Marino does coke at Pitt. And Jim Kelly gets picked. Obviously worked out somewhat for Buffalo. Go to 4 Super Bowls with Kelly.
Yeah.
Ken O'Brien goes to the Jets. I'm missing one in the middle there. But yeah, that's what happens at the draft. One thing comes. Tunsil was so dumb. His uncle wanted him to be his agent, so his uncle leaks a video of him with a gas mask hitting a bong, and he falls. He would have been the first pick of the draft.
Yeah.
All right, let's forget about it. Let's forget about the. I just want to see this quick. The quarterbacks taken. Yeah. So Elway was first in '83, and then Jim Kelly was the 14th pick. And then Tony Eason went to New England, New England sucked for the next 10 years. And then there's the New York Jets at 24. They make all the right decisions, the Jets. We get Dan Marino. Nope, let's take Ken O'Brien.
There we go.
And then Dan Marino goes pick 27 to the Miami Dolphins. A year later, Miami's in the Super Bowl. Obviously, they don't win it. But this is the difference with teams. And Don Shula was running that team. So this is the difference with good executives, good football people, and football people who are probably a little in over their head. And 20 teams have a guy in over their head. 10 of them, 12 of them now have an elite guy who doesn't hesitate, trusts his instincts. And then there's 1 or 2 of them, maybe 4 guys, 2 of which were in the Super Bowl last night, who just seem to get it right.
Howie Roseman, Hall of Famer or no?
Absolutely. 2 Super Bowl rings now. He's
Two different coaches, two different quarterbacks.
Yep. He's ideally going to be in the all-time wins discussion for executives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
All right, halftime show. Your thoughts?
That was terrible. I mean, that was god awful. I don't mind Kendrick Lamar. I don't mind his music. I've listened to it. It was awful. I was not entertained. You could barely hear him.
Mm-hmm.
It was
that was weird. It was like I couldn't even hear what he's saying. And again, I don't mind Kendrick either. I've listened to some Kendrick stuff.
Yeah,
I liked it, but that was bad last.
Terrible. So boring. Such a boring show. How many people are coming out of that car, by the way? I think there's still
that was nuts.
Coming. Clearly, it was like there was a stage underneath and
but still full-size people too. These are full-size humans coming out of the car.
That was cool. That was actually cool. But other than that, it was terrible. Serena Williams was there. Did you see Serena Williams?
Yeah, I caught her right when she came on the screen. Serena.
I looked and I said out loud, I'm like, was that Serena Williams? And everybody's like, no way. I mean, it looked like her. And we were like, yeah, it probably wasn't her. And then it was confirmed. It was her.
Yeah, it was interesting. Pop up.
Weird. Samuel L. Jackson, like that was all weird.
Yeah, like I like the American flag. They made the American flag on the steps. That was cool.
Yeah.
But does it move the needle? No.
Gabe liked it. It was so boring.
I thought it was probably the worst halftime show I've ever seen. And I'm not trying to be one of those people that are it just moved me in no way.
No, it was not. It was terrible. Hated it.
All right. It's enough on the Super Bowl, man. I mean, terrible game.
The Chiefs will be fine. The Chiefs will be fine.
Rank your 3 worst Super Bowls. We've got a comment before from my boy Reese. What was a worst Super Bowl matchup? Rams, Pats, or last night's? I don't even think Rams, Pats.
No, because
Denver,
Seattle. You had the Rams had a chance. You know what I mean? Like, so
2 minutes left when the Pats had the ball. Rams had a chance.
It wasn't entertaining. I agree with you, but at least the game was still sort of in question. That's when the game is not in question. That's when it's terrible. So yeah, I mean, this one was probably worse.
The Denver Seattle one was probably even worse because at least here it was 24-0 with a minute and a half left, and KC had the ball, and you were saying if they can get 8 here and then get 8 on the other side, it's 24-16. But
right.
Denver, Seattle, I mean, literally the first snap of the game goes over Manning's head and it's over.
Yeah, and then
they just ran them out of the building so fast. Both sucked, though. Both were terrible. And if you really think about it, we've had some good Super Bowls as of late.
Yeah.
We've actually been lucky with, I mean, these Chiefs wins have all been really good games. The Tampa win sucked. That was a terrible game. The Eagles Patriots was great. Broncos Panthers was good. Low scoring, but close. Good. That's all you want, really, is a close game. That's all you want. And how about, I mean, last night, this is the last point I have on the Super Bowl. First drive of the game, and I have not been a fan of the Chiefs get all the calls narrative. I don't disagree with it, but I just think it's so pointless to talk about after games because I'm not changing the call by talking about it. So I don't like to talk about it, but the first drive of the game, A.J. Brown gets that pass interference, and I was like, oh, my God, this is going to be a disaster tomorrow when Casey wins field goal.
But you know what? Yeah, I agreed in the moment. That was the only call they got, which, again, I'm not going to sit here and cry for KC, and the game wasn't close. KC got nothing last night. And I had mentioned this on the hard line last week. I said to JM, I was like, KC is going to get nothing this week. They're going to get no calls this week because Goodell and the refs don't want to have to answer questions about whether or not KC gets unfair treatment.
And I thought that was going to be the case against Buffalo. That's what I thought when I thought it was going to happen.
No.
But about the MVP, Allen, we haven't spoke about this yet, you and I. We're going to move on here now from the Super Bowl to Aaron Rodgers, Cooper Kupp, Myles Garrett, Deebo Samuel, all the news going on there, a little bit of offseason preview stuff. But first, the awards, only one that's controversial in any way is MVP. I thought the rest were just chalk the rest of the way. But your thoughts on Allen winning the MVP?
I would have voted for Lamar, and I'm a huge Allen guy. I would have voted for Lamar, but I'm happy for Josh, and I sort of understand it. I like the point being made, and I do agree with this. It still wouldn't have swayed my vote, but and the point being made for Allen is when you play the Bills, the only person you're really game planning for, like that's really keeping you up at night, is Allen. And then when you game plan for the Ravens, there's two guys keeping you up at night, Henry and Lamar. I like the point. I don't love it. I sort of agree with it, but Lamar was still better. And I would have voted for Lamar Jackson win the MVP. But I'm fine with Allen winning. Like I'm
Me
not
too.
outraged.
And I think stats have to play a role in the MVP. People who say that stats shouldn't matter, it's dumb, it's ignorant, because you can't sit here and try to make a justification that Drake May had the least to work with and had the Patriots in games, and he was the most valuable, because if they didn't have him, they'd be 0-17. Yeah. That's just not the argument that can be made. So you need stats to play a role. But obviously both guys are good enough in stats. I'll say, just thinking back at the year, now completely not biased by the regular season at all from a week-to-week basis, if I needed one player to win me a game in the regular season this year, I would have taken Allen.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see it from that perspective. I still think at the end of the regular season, I would have voted for Lamar because he finished so strong. But yeah, putting the whole thing into perspective, it does feel like Allen's the best player in football.
Right now, yes. Yes.
I think that Allen's at the point in his career where he's actually better than Mahomes, which doesn't mean I'd take him. That's not the argument I'm making. But there were years where Peyton was better than Brady. It just felt like this was Allen's year to be the best quarterback in the league.
You know what's funny? I heard this discussion before, and it was, well, how could you call Mahomes the greatest of all time when right now there's a few quarterbacks that you can make the argument that are better or had better seasons than Mahomes has the past 2 years? And obviously Burrow and Allen and Lamar would be those guys. And I sort of agree with that, and I sort of don't, because we saw a couple of down years in the middle from Brady. So I think Mahomes is going to win the MVP next year. If they do the right things in the offseason, like I feel like we're going to see MVP Mahomes again in 2025. So, but that's obviously a day after the Super Bowl prediction. That could probably change. But we saw a couple of down years from Brady.
I think after losing the Super Bowl, a couple of years of down offense in Kansas City in the regular season, they've just been doing enough to get their 1 seed, 2 seed, and
you're going to get Rice back. Worthy looks like a big time player. Maybe you
bring
in one more guy.
You probably bring Brown back again.
Yeah.
To get a full healthy season. So then you have those 3 coming back. I think they're a team that could be adding a skill player in the draft in the offseason, tight end or running back. Kelsey, writing's on the wall for Kelsey.
You think he's retiring?
I don't think he's retiring, but I think he's got 1 year left, and it might be a slug of the year.
Okay.
Because he didn't look great this year.
They have to draft a tackle, wherever it is, maybe 2.
Yeah. If a guy falls to them, I think that they'd be, obviously, there's good depth at the position, but so first round, I can see him going skill player. You can see that I gave him Tyler Warren, tight end in the first round. Just they can get him in the second round too, but that's kind of just first mock draft, like throw stuff at the wall. But yeah, KC's got a lot of work to do for a team that was just in the Super Bowl and won the last 2 before this year. They have a lot of work to do to get back to being actually dominant, because the Eagles felt dominant. The Eagles felt unbeatable. How many times did we say going to Philly in the playoffs is a death sentence for NFC teams? Just the last place you want to be. You'd rather go to Detroit, which proved true. And for Philly, they just felt so dominant all year. Even Buffalo at times felt really dominant. Yeah. Baltimore at times felt pretty dominant. KC never felt that way. Obviously, they won almost every week. They lost 3 games this year total, but they never felt overwhelmingly great.
I mean, this Philadelphia team has a legitimate, and I heard this from an Eagles fan, so I mean, take it with a grain of salt. But there's an argument to be made. This is one of the best teams in the 2000s.
There is.
I mean, they scored 95 points in the NFC Championship game and Super Bowl combined. That is insane.
And neither game was competitive.
No. And they just
they played Washington, but
they played Washington and then a team going for a three-peat. Their 2 Super Bowl wins are against Brady, Mahomes, Reed, Belichick.
Yeah.
That's something. That's definitely something there.
Wow. I didn't even think of that. People last night were trying to take away from Mahomes because they're saying his 3 Super Bowl wins are against Garoppolo, Purdy, and
Hurts.
who am I missing? Hurts.
Well,
Which
Hurts Super Bowl
Brady
MVP.
Brady beat. Brady lost to Foles. He lost to Eli. Neither of them are Hall of Famers, you know?
You know that right there
Let's
was
go there now. Let's go
that was
there, though.
unnecessary right there.
Let's go to the Eli Hall of Fame candidacy because we have not spoken since that either.
Bad. You know, listen, I'm not a big first ballot guy, second ballot guy, and I've explained this over and over again. If you're a Hall of Famer today, you're probably a Hall of Famer tomorrow, in 2 years, in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel about it. I'm running. I don't think he's going to get in. Like, that's how I feel right now. You know, and maybe that's just the pessimism of being a fan of his. But, like, you didn't put him in here. It was a really weak class. I get it was his first time on the ballot, and they didn't want to make him a first ballot Hall of Famer. But if the Super Bowls and if the regular season stats are really going to play that big of a role, then I just don't see a scenario in which he ever gets in, because he wasn't even close, Kevin. He was not close to getting in here, which a lot of people don't realize. So I think that I don't know. I'm pissed. I'm pissed. Let's just say that.
And it's going to take him a few years now. I initially I was like, all right, he didn't get in this year. He'll get in next year. But Breeze is up next year. So they're going to go Breeze for their quarterback on the ballot and probably move past Eli, because you compare the careers. I know that Eli has the Super Bowl and MVP over the extra one. But Breeze, yeah, we retired with every record at the time and has that Super Bowl win. So
and then but then Kevin, you have Rivers next year, okay? If I need to win a playoff game, I'm going to Brady. I mean, to Eli. But if I need to win a regular season game, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm taking Rivers. Rivers was a better quarterback, you know, in almost every way besides the postseason. So, like, Rivers could probably get in over Eli too, and that wouldn't shock me. And I would, by the way, I would vote Rivers in.
Matt Ryan, I think, will get in over Eli.
Ryan's totally a Hall of Famer. Totally a Hall of Famer.
The MVP. He has the counting stats. He's been to a Super Bowl. They lost in terrible fashion, but he's got a case. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting road for Eli.
And you know, Kevin, I'm not sure he's going to get in.
I'm not. I think he will eventually, but maybe 5-6 years down the line. And it's funny that we're here because how long has this discussion gone on? Is Eli a Hall of Famer? And for me, the answer has always been yes, but I get the discrepancies, but it's yes. And now, I don't know.
And you know what's funny? I'm a huge Giants fan, and Eli's my childhood hero. And I completely understand the case against him. I mean, I just totally understand the case against him. I know he wasn't that great in the regular season. I watched it with my own 2 eyes. And yet, the postseason stats and how good he was in those 2 postseasons, I think actually get undervalued in the conversation. How good he was late in games.
Yep. When he made every play in the fourth quarter of every game he needed to. Even a lot of the playoff losses they had. He was very good, and it wasn't really on him that they lost those playoff games. But
the one bad one was the one where they were the 1 seed against the Eagles. That was the only real bad one in the year after they won the Super Bowl the first time.
Yeah, that was a bad one. But other than that, I mean, Eli was a stellar postseason performer and one of the greatest of all time at playing in the postseason. He's better than Peyton in the postseason.
He's more road wins in the postseason than Brady, than his brother. I mean, that's something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something.
Yep. All right. NFL news the last few weeks. We'll wrap up with, where do you want to start? Rodgers, Garrett.
Let's start Rodgers. Yeah.
Yesterday, obviously, Jay Glazer comes out, says Jets informed Aaron Rodgers that they're going to go in a different direction. It makes sense. It saves them a lot of money. I think it's 2 sides to this for me. Rodgers gives you the best chance to win this year and try and end your playoff drought. But he also is a huge distraction and spectacle, not because I think he's bad in the locker room or anything. I just think there's so much media attention that a first-time head coach, first-time general manager might want to stay a little more under the radar while they try and compete than have the big expectations with Aaron Rodgers.
You know, watching the Glenn press conference live as we did, I did not get the sense that he was overjoyed by having Rodgers on that roster.
Me either.
You know, especially like looking back on some of those clips now, especially with them discussing him, he kind of seemed annoyed at having to discuss what they were going to do with the quarterback currently on the roster. So 100%, he gives them the best chance to win. I don't think they could really bring in another quarterback that would give them a better chance to win, especially with the way he played down the stretch. But at the same time, you're trying to build something here. And you know, I sort of agree with it. You know, looking back on it now, I sort of agree with Glenn here saying, you know what, I could find a bridge quarterback for cheap. If I need one, we'll compete. We'll do what we can, and we'll move on.
And I don't understand the sentiment from Jets fans. Oh, well, they're punting on the season now. They just went 5-12 with Aaron Rodgers for 17 games. Like, I don't know if they win 10 games or 11 games and end their drought with him next year. I doubt they would. He was bad for the first half of the season. He was good for the second half. The team was awfully coached. Their defense was terrible. The offensive line at times was a disaster. But I don't trust him to stay healthy. I don't trust him to be great all year long. And when you're saving yourself a ton of money down the line, Darren Muji just came from a situation where they bought out Russell Wilson for as much. So in the first year, they're in the playoffs. So he's seen it happen.
You know,
do the Jets get their Bo Nix this year? Feels unlikely. But
you might draft a quarterback. I mean, listen, again, you just mentioned it. Could they improve the rest of the roster, sign a guy, and I'm not saying this is the quarterback they bring in, but, you know, a Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson type of situation where you're bringing in a guy for literally $4 million, whatever it is, and maybe they win 9 games. You never know if they're well coached and they're improved from the season prior, and you bring in a game manager, like, there's a chance you do break that drought, or at least better. I think they'll be better than the 5-win mark. I think they'll go, if their win total's 5.5, I take the over.
Yeah, we have to see what the team looks like a few weeks from now for me to say that, but I can agree with that. I also think you look at it, right? The breakdown is they have 21 million right now. Cut Aaron Rodgers, and you have about 45 million, I think it is. But if you cut Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Alan Lazard, they have 70 million in cap space. That's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah.
With a new group. I don't think Devontae Adams wants to play for the Jets anyways.
And I mean, you know, you keeping Wilson happy now. I mean, I don't know if he would have actually requested a trade if Rodgers was still on the team, but you know, at least Wilson's in a good spot now, no?
Yeah, I think he's happier. I don't think he got along great with Rodgers. I don't think that they played well together. Everyone will post the stats, but it never felt like they clicked at all.
No, not at all.
And it didn't seem like once Devontae Adams got there,
he was happy.
He was happy at all with that, which might be a Wilson problem. But either way, it seemed like he wasn't happy. Do you think that they go in with Tyrod Taylor, Jordan Travis, and insert random player to week 1? Or do you think they sign a guy like Kirk Cousins who is going to get that $2.5-3 million veteran designation, that minimum? Do you think
the problem
that's
is,
the situation?
Like, I look at the roster and it's just like, yeah, they were bad last year, but they were so poorly coached. It's not a bad roster. So if they're healthy and you make the right moves elsewhere, I sort of feel like I would bring in a bridge guy and then have him potentially start until, all right, is Travis ready, or is a guy you drafted ready to go? I think I would go that route because I don't know. Am I crazy to think that with the right coaching and average quarterback play, they could potentially compete for a spot?
I mean, they have a 4th place schedule this year, or a 3rd place schedule this year because the Patriots came in 4th. But they have a 3rd place schedule this year. Their division's not great. New England's still. I know New England got Vrabel, but I don't think they're jumping from 3 wins to 11 wins this year with that roster. So they'll be beatable. Miami's very beatable. Buffalo, you hope to split at best. They own the Jets, though. This past year, they killed them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see it. And they've been so poorly coached. I think Saleh was one of the worst coaches in their franchise's history. So they were so poorly coached without him even. It got worse. They're not in the worst spot. Losing Aaron Rodgers, I don't think you should be losing sleep. And I wanted them to keep him, but I don't think you should be losing sleep at night if you're a Jets fan.
Not at all. Not at all.
Myles Garrett, what do you think this looks like?
That you're going to have one of these really elite teams get really aggressive. I think watching what Philadelphia was able to do last night, I think if you're a team in the NFC, I think if you're the Chiefs, I think if you're the Bills, you need to be considering it. You need to be calling up Cleveland right now and saying, this is what we'll give you. I think last night was so great for the Browns because of how important that pass rush was. And how do you combat that? You combat that by going to get one of the one of two pass rushers in the entire sport, still 29, 30 years old, probably has 3 more years left of being this elite guy. Go get him and you change a lot of things for your organization. So one of those elite teams, maybe a team in the NFC North, maybe the Eagles, maybe the Commandos, one of those teams.
I think it's going to be Washington, Green Bay, or Detroit.
Okay.
And people are scoffing at me when I say Detroit, but they have enough talent to give up first-round picks. Why
wouldn't they?
That they want. They can put Myles Garrett next to a recovering Aiden Hutchinson next year. So I don't understand why that would be bad for Detroit to make that move, especially when you're trying to take some pressure off of your coordinators who are stepping into the job for the first time on defense. Go get this guy. You have the best pass rush in the NFL, the best pass rush duo in the NFL in a very long time if you have both. Potentially 2 15-sack guys. I don't know what Hutchinson's track is to play next year, but I don't know. Those 3 teams are the ones I look at. But Washington obviously is a big favorite, I think. What teams, because they're not paying their quarterback anything.
But I do agree with you though. I do agree that would be a good spot, and we'll see. I'm very excited to see how this market ends up playing out.
Could Philly get him? They're losing Josh Sweat.
Yeah, I said that last week. If I had to predict a team, it would be them. So I don't know anymore, but still, I would not rule it out.
All right, and on the side of the coin for Cleveland, they could just take Carter with the second pick. So they
get 2 first-round picks. And another
in theory, you replace them right there on draft night, and you add picks.
And you know what? You're not forcing yourself into a quarterback that maybe you don't want.
Yeah. Kupp, Deebo Samuel, I think, are in interesting kind of spots. Contracts are a little different, though. But neither of them really get you too excited to acquire, especially when you don't have Shanahan or McVay to make them the players that they are. I think Kupp is a guy I wouldn't even touch away from McVay. He's had 2,000 yards. He's had as many 1,000-yard seasons as Kenny Golladay since entering the league. So, I mean, Kupp is just – and that's not disrespecting Kupp at all. He's been a great, great player. But this is not a guy I would trade for.
They're going to have to pay down a lot of that contract just to get a 3rd or a 4th round pick back.
And Deebo, since 2021, has just gotten worse every year. I don't know if I touch that.
I don't want Deebo at all, especially if it's going to come with a new contract. I'm not, again, if you mentioned it, if Shanahan does not want him, if McVay does not want him, why the hell do I want him? That's how I would go through this. If they're allowing him to explore trades, then why the hell would I go and make that move? So, yeah, I think Deebo's done. And in Kupp, I have no interest in as well. So there we go.
And yeah, if they thought they were critical pieces to success, then they would be.
They're not leaving.
Structuring contract, re-signing a deal, renegotiating. They're not doing that. They're just saying we got to move on and do what's best for our team here. But anything else today you want to talk about before we wrap up?
I got nothing. It's baseball season. Football season was this year at best, and we're ready to go into baseball. And the
baseball
draft.
Camps, the draft as well. Draft season, baseball season.
We love this is going to be a big draft season, obviously, for our teams here, especially the Giants, who may be picking one. Who the hell knows? So it's going to be a fun off season, I think, for us, because that's where our season starts. It's not the regular season. It's definitely not the postseason. It's the off season.
It is every year. That'll do it for us today. Last official Sunday recap of the year. So we appreciate you sticking through for season 2 of the recap. We'll be here sporadically talking football, but really going to be a full shift to baseball in the next couple of weeks for us as the Burrows goes full steam ahead for its season 2. And you can check out everything BTO Media. I put out the first edition of the draft guide this morning, so that gives you my top 50 players, different position breakdowns, mock draft, everything you need. Those will come out every 2 or 3 weeks. A new edition of it. Last year we did 5. I'll probably keep it at 5 again. So check that out before the draft as we lead up everything you need to know. Burrows probably 3 weeks out from doing every week and just a real full go, more than you've seen any BTO podcast do up to this point. Looking forward to it. Thanks for sticking with us through the Sunday recap, and we'll see you in the next one.